It's
They're
awesome.
both being voted on, yeah. And it'll be about 150 kids in the auditorium here watching it on live stream.
It's meaningful for what's happening today, but it also could influence how they think about government.
Exactly the point. That's right.
And the
Exactly
commitment to community. That's
yeah,
fabulous.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Wow.
Especially where from the parents' point of view, we couldn't do very much. They didn't qualify for much. They were low income, but not low enough that we could do much.
Yeah.
So, where are you? I just don't want to give you false hope. They didn't have enough. They weren't earning enough for renters insurance, so they didn't have it.
Okay, and so here we go.
Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Rapping with the Rep. I'm State Representative Ken Gordon, and I'm here with a very special guest, Secretary of Housing and Economic Development, Jay Ash. Welcome to our show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Secretary Ash, you've been to Burlington several times since you've taken office. I think half a dozen, and you've frequented our restaurants and become a real good friend to our community. So I'm really happy to have you here to have this conversation about economic development in Burlington and Bedford and Wilmington. And I think as having been here, this is a thriving high-tech area. We're bringing in new businesses, and the state is bringing in business. GE just came in last week. And I'm excited to have this conversation because I know that we have the support of the administration. Can you talk about or tell our viewers about some of the things the administration is doing to support our high-tech industry here in the state?
Sure. Well, again, thanks for having me here, and it's great to be able to talk to you and to the people who are watching about what's happening in Massachusetts. We're very excited about everything that's happening in Massachusetts. The economy is going great. We had the largest job growth last year in 2015 that we've had in the last 15 years. We added 73,800 jobs. Business is booming in lots of areas, and we're doing all that we can to continue the great record we have, and we're looking for pockets where things aren't as good, aren't as robust, and trying to make differences there. Specifically in Greater Boston, and specifically up here in Burlington and in the neighboring communities along 128. Very excited about everything we see around technology, and in fact, technology is a major play of ours. We filed a economic development bill, and that economic development bill is based upon our belief that we can be number one in many areas of emerging technology, and we're going to do everything we can to get there. So an important part of the bill is a mass innovation initiative. I had to slow down on that because I'm still letting that roll out, but the mass innovation initiative. And then another important part of the bill is helping communities prepare for success. And those two things together allow for communities and businesses to come together to create jobs and vitality.
Thank you, and I'd love to talk about that because when you talk about our innovation economy, you're talking about the businesses that are right here in Burlington and Bedford, and we were just voted by I think it was one of the publications, the #1 state in the nation for the innovation economy that we have. So what are some of the things that the administration is planning to do to help that part of our economy?
Yeah, you're referencing Bloomberg's, and
I am.
Bloomberg's again identified Massachusetts as #1 in innovation, and that's a great place to be because as we look out into the future, innovation is going to change everything we do, and we want to be at the forefront of that. And so to be at the forefront of that, we've been able to work with our friends in the legislature, and thank you for your support for the agenda that we've been putting forward. We've been able to work on things like supporting photonics and flexible electronics and revolutionary fibers. Last month we announced a major initiative around digital healthcare. There's lots of interesting things happening, not only things that are going to create jobs and create revenues for communities, but are really going to change the world, transform the world. I talk about revolutionary fibers. Massachusetts has long been a textile state. We were at the forefront of yesterday's textiles. Well, tomorrow's textiles will be wearing clothes that will be able to tell how hot or cold we are, and will turn on heat or cold to respond to that. That we'll be able to tell if our baby has a fever before we know, or to think about our military, and of course military is important in this region. We'll be able to tell if combat men and women in the field have been injured, and we'll actually be able to do something about it while they're waiting for a medic to come. There's so many exciting things that are happening, and to be at the forefront of it here in Massachusetts and and many of those great things that are happening are going to be in this area. It's just really exciting.
And Jay, the things that you're mentioning, they're happening. These aren't futuristic predictions. These are things that our technology is starting on already. We're talking things like flying cars. I mean, right here in Woburn, we're working on cars that eventually will be able to leave the road. It's an amazing time that we live in. You even think about 10 years ago, and who would think that we would be able to use the internet like we do, or 20 years ago? I mean, it would be unthinkable. But here we are.
Sure. Is there a George Jetson that lives in Burlington? Yeah, no. It's we're working on autonomous vehicles, for example. So still on the road, but 20 years from now, we won't be driving cars. Me because I'm too old. You because you've been smart enough to buy a car that drives for yourself. And all the studies that we've reviewed indicate that. The accidents that occur are typically driver error. They're not computer error when we're looking at the emerging autonomous vehicles industry. So we're excited to be in that. And what we're saying to everybody who wants to listen is that we're already number one in innovation. We've got the highest educated workforce in the country here in Massachusetts. We've got great institutions. Governor Baker jokes all the time that the Massachusetts secret isn't about oil in the ground or sunshine in the air. The Massachusetts secret is that we founded two great colleges 400 years ago, and then we just sat around and waited for technology to appear. So we have so many things going for us, and to be able to now marshal that into all these different areas. We're following, I think, 12 emerging areas of technology, and are going to be players in each of them.
I can see that. Not only is it two great universities, but we have many great universities.
Yes.
And our community colleges are fantastic. Our high schools and our regional technical schools are fantastic. I know the governor mentioned his support and renewed support for the regional technical schools, because when companies move into our area or stay in our area, they're looking for help all up and down that continuum. And because of our education, we can provide that.
Yeah, we're number one in a lot of areas. The thing that we're most proud of, and I know that you're most proud of, is that we're number one in public education.
Right.
And so that's the basis of a strong economy. To steal a line from my good friend Senator Markey, he refers to Massachusetts as the brain state.
Yes, he does.
And the brain state starts with what happens in our public education. So that's great. We are supporting community colleges and vocational schools. If I had a dime for every time the governor said community college and vocational school in a meeting, I'd be a wealthy man. We believe that while we have more people employed here than we ever have, and businesses keep coming here, we believe that there are a lot of people that can do better by having better training, that the kids need to be more focused on what the opportunities are for the future, and vocational schools and community colleges are going to be a key to our workforce development efforts.
They are. When businesses come into Burlington and Bedford, the first thing I ask them is, why did you choose this area? And the answer I always get is educated workforce, or well-trained workforce.
That's
always
interesting.
their first
The answer I get is Ken Gordon. So, okay, all right, you get, all right, that's good to know.
Very good. But that's our, like you say, that's our stock and trade.
Yeah, it really
They're
is.
coming here. They're not coming here for the weather. They're
Yeah.
coming here for our people.
Well, the GE example is a great example. So GE decides that they're going to leave Connecticut. For those people who haven't been to the GE campus in Connecticut, it's a campus. It's actually a throwback to the 50s style mentality of corporations, that we're going to put a wall around our place and we're not going to let anyone see what's going on here, and our people are going to stay here and we're going to do wonderful things. And GE has evolved and realized that to be in the thick of things, to be in places in a major urban area, is really where you get the great ideas. You run into people, you're able to network with companies, you're able to buy smaller companies, you're able to help startups. And so when GE was looking for a place to locate, they had the choice of anywhere in the country or in the world. And what they said was to us that we value what's happening in innovation in Greater Boston. We actually took them on a tour, and we stopped in Waltham at the Verizon Innovation Center to show them what's happening in that particular center, but as an example of what's happening along 128. We talked to them about Burlington as a possible location, for example, and they got really excited about the people, they got really excited about the institutions, they got really excited about the business, and as important, they got really excited about the relationships. And so we talked an awful lot about the relationship between the legislature and the governor and how we're working on the same page. And that meant an awful lot to them. They know that, if things get tough, and we hope they don't get tough,
right.
That we have reasonable, rational people who look forward to the challenges of working out things together.
Yeah, and that impressed me. This is my second term, so my third year in the legislature. And I didn't know what to expect coming in. I'd never served in state government. And I thought, or I was basing my opinion on what I read about Washington.
Sure.
I thought people just fought with each other because they were, there was a turf situation. Whereas when I came into Beacon Hill, I realized that you're working with a Republican administration. We work very well together.
Yes.
You're not experienced with working in a Republican administration.
Sure.
Everything works out. As the governor said in his State of the Commonwealth, it may be boring for the media, but it works for us.
Yeah, I joke with the governor all the time. I'm a Democrat, lifelong Democrat. I worked for the House Majority Leader for a while in the State House. I joke with the governor all the time that not only did I campaign against Republicans, but I may have done some dastardly things during those campaigns, and now I'm in a Republican administration. It's been fascinating to be on the other side of the aisle. It's actually been both enlightening and enriching. I, like many, had preconceived notions of what it would be like to be in the other party's administration, and all of those have been busted. And I really think it's about the governor. I think it's about the speaker, your speaker, and my speaker, and about the Senate president, and their desire to put politics aside and instead focus on people and good public policy. And all that energy that's usually wasted on the politics side, the blocking and tackling and worrying about how I'm going to get you back for what you did to me, and all that energy is now put into good public policy. And as a result, we've been able to do wonderful things here. And the GE success is an example of what the possibilities are if we all work together. Had we been not working with each other, but instead been at odds, GE would have said, hey, this isn't a place that we want to be. No matter what you have for benefits in the ecosystem, we don't want to be in a place where there's that much controversy and that much political infighting. So it's one example of many as to why ultimately the people of Massachusetts are going to benefit from the relationships we all have.
Yeah, and in that same way of cooperating, you've been here to events run by the Middlesex 3 Coalition,
Yes.
which is our towns, 9 towns running up the Route 3 corridor, have gotten together and take the attitude that, you know what, if one of us gets a business coming in to the region, another of us is going to help. It's going to help our home sales. Another one of us is going to help our employment situation. We all benefit. So rather than have infighting and that type of unfair competition, let's cooperate. Let's work together and let's create a region that's attractive so that we can be seen as a region like Silicon Valley in California or the Research Triangle. Let's do this together. So when GE comes to Boston, as you say, Burlington benefits, Bedford benefits, because the region benefits. The cachet of the region is going to help the next company coming in to say, well, they made that decision. Let's see why.
Yeah. I govern by a lot of slogans, and one of them is that all boats rise in a high tide.
Right.
And that's what you're practicing here. The Middlesex 3. I've been very impressed with the spirit of cooperation and the real integration of community planning and thought here in the region. And I go around to all different sections of the state. Last year I visited more than 100 communities, and I want to be in places where people are working together. I want to be in places where people share a common vision. I want to be in places where people understand that their own personal prosperity is tied to what happens in communities and what happens in business. And I really feel that here, and it's a reason why I keep on coming back, not to mention the great restaurants.
One of the areas that we're trying to cooperate to solve a problem is with unemployment. And here in Burlington and Bedford, we have low unemployment. We have high employment. We have job openings. The restaurant industry is thriving, as you say. And one of the reasons that it's thriving is because the high-tech businesses are coming in, are staying, and so there are people that are eating at these restaurants, and so they're looking for help. There is higher unemployment in areas like Lowell. They're looking for jobs. We'll talk to Secretary Pollock, the Secretary of Transportation, at another show. But one of our challenges for business is moving people around, getting people to fill these job openings. And so I can imagine that with the governor's cabinet, you're working together to address these problems. How is it working together with the other secretaries in addressing business needs?
When I knew Stephanie Pollock for 25 years as Secretary of Transportation, when we had our first conversation as secretaries, the Secretary of Transportation said to the Secretary of Economic Development that my job is to help you promote economic development. And I sat back and said, wow, how lucky am I? I'm not sure how many other secretaries of economic development have heard that from transportation. The governor has enabled us, and by enabling us, I mean he has told us if we work together and come up with a common vision, he's going to work very hard to make sure that that vision gets realized. So the Secretary of Transportation, the Secretary of Environmental Affairs, Matt Beaton, and I meet every other week to talk about economic development. And the funny thing about those meetings is I sit in the room and I listen and I ask and I listen to Secretary of Transportation for infrastructure money. And I listen and I ask the Secretary of Environmental Affairs for help on MEPA permits or Chapter 91 permits or things like that. And I sit back and I say, while I'm in charge of economic development, they actually have more to do with economic development than I do. They have to sign off on all these things to happen. So I'm very lucky to have that terrific working relationship. And then there's another one and you were talking about workforce. The governor feels so strongly about workforce that he put together 2 cabinet-level task forces to work on workforce issues. And so the Secretary of Labor and Workforce Development, Ron Walker, and the Secretary of Education, Jim Pizer, and I also meet every other week. And that has been powerful. It's been powerful because we were each doing something about workforce, but we were overlapping, and none of us knew where the gaps were. And so in 2015, we spent a lot of time figuring out, all right, where are all the pieces on the board, and how do they work, and how should they work? And now we have a true alignment within the administration, and we are now working with colleges and universities. We're now working with high schools and even middle schools. We're working with job training centers, and most importantly, we're working with employers. So our effort is really employer-centric. At the end of the day, we hope that young people in school and adults who are looking for new skills are very proud of the certificate that they get, the diploma they get, but more importantly, are very proud of what happens just after that, which is there's a job available. And so the economic development bill that we just released has money in it to support community colleges and vocational schools. The effort of the Secretary of Education is to provide additional money for curriculum training, all with an employer-based perspective. And the Secretary of Labor and Workforce Development is really working on making sure that those job centers have employers at the table talking about the retraining skills necessary in order to allow people who are unemployed or who are looking for a better job a better chance to access the workforce.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute, because I did hear yesterday from Secretary Walker at Labor and Workforce Development, and there is a new program coming out that's going to help some of where the unemployment occurs in our district. It's largely from people who have had a successful career in some form of technology usually, and then the technology passes them by because it changes so quickly, and so they find themselves laid off, and now they've had a track record of success, right? But they're in their 50s or 40s, and they've got
that
to be
old
retrained.
in their 50s. Oh my,
like me,
and me,
and they're looking for retraining. And there's now some support within the job centers, targeting not only just your basic general skills, your Microsoft Office skills that we should all have, but looking at, let's identify some employment opportunities, some job openings, and train these people, matching them to the job openings so there's a job for them when they finish the program, which I think is very important.
Yeah, we have an enviable problem here in Massachusetts. We have more jobs available than people who are ready to go into those jobs, and so that's a great place to be because you can train up people. And what we are committed to, and I say we, and I talk about the legislature too, because we talk about this all the time at the State House. What we're committed to is finding ways of getting anyone who wants a better opportunity for themselves and for their family, an opportunity to exercise that. And so when we think about an older workforce, when we think about younger kids who may have dropped out of school or not had much of a work history, when we think about all those populations that are typically highest on a chronically unemployed list, we know that there are jobs out there, and we will not be happy, we will not rest until we've found ways to get those people who are looking for a better opportunity into those jobs. Yeah,
this is a great state to work, and people know that. They come and we have these opportunities. Another reason that employers tell me that they come in is because of the cultural opportunities that we have here in Massachusetts. I mean, it is a great place to bring a business, and as you mentioned with GE, they're looking around. Where are we going to live? Where is our business going to live? But also, where are we going to live? And we have had an investment in our cultural centers and our cultural opportunities for years. And can you talk a little bit about that as the governor continuing that commitment to our cultural centers?
Yeah, the stuff that we do around cultural facilities, cultural institutions, cultural programming is an important part of our quality of life, but it also contributes to our economic development. You've correctly identified that GE, we spent some time talking about cultural opportunities that are around and the quality of life in neighborhoods in different communities. I wouldn't be surprised if any number of GE executives, for instance, live in your district and up and down 128 and commute into Boston like many others do. So support for cultural activities is about a better quality of life, but it's also about economic development. Again, referring to the economic development bill that we filed, we've recognized that and actually are including funding in to help communities improve their own cultural offerings. And we may create in some communities in downtowns or in other places, cultural districts that will allow for local culture to support the local economy, but will network in and weave into a larger fabric of great cultural offerings that we have here in Massachusetts. So, everywhere we go, there's great theaters. Right. There are great museums. As I'm driving around the state, I especially look for those little theaters or museums that nobody really knows about, but yet are there and are important anchors to their neighborhood and maybe even their larger community, and try to highlight them because there's so many wonderful things out there, and it's a great part of being here in Massachusetts.
You're right about that, and we'll invite you to come up here to the Burlington Players anytime.
I'd love that.
We're award-winning performances, and they
just don't ask me to sing. I'm not going to rap either, so.
Well, maybe today you will. You've been a city manager for the majority of your career, working on the municipal level. How has that experience helped or affected you in your job here on the state level? And how is the state now interacting and helping the municipalities?
Yeah, I was city manager for 14 years in my native Chelsea. Very proud of the record of accomplishment there. Chelsea's seen a great transformation, and we're excited about everything that's happening. A lot of, you've correctly identified that a lot of what I experienced and did in Chelsea is now reflected in my work in the state level. I travel around the state and I meet with communities large and small, and I'm able to bring the experience that I had as a city manager to play to support what some communities are thinking about, and also to question, politely question what their thoughts may be and make some suggestions as to how they may look at things differently. Example, I was out in western part of the state recently, and I was in a downtown, and we were walking around there downtown looking for opportunities for development, and I pointed to a building that was only a single-story building. And I said, so in some communities they build a second, a third, and fourth-story residential development on top of that, and you bring in market rate residential in downtown, people with disposable income. Most people with disposable income are then looking for places to eat. Next thing you know, 2 or 3 restaurants open up. And once the restaurants open up, the retail flocks, and all of a sudden you have a thriving downtown in a place that was kind of desolate. So it's experiences like that I try to share with people. I also have a great deal of respect, as does the governor, for what happens on the local level. So the governor's a former selectman in Swampscott, and I had my experience in Chelsea city government. So we very much believe that local people know best. And so a tenet of our administration is not to dictate to municipalities what you need to do. It's instead to go out and engage in a conversation, help nurture a discussion about what the possibilities are. And then when a community or a group of communities like Middlesex 3 come up and say, hey, we have a plan, we've thought this out, we've engaged the community, and this is what we believe is possible, we want to embrace that as much as possible. So, the last time we were together out here, we were giving out a MassWorks grant, for example. A MassWorks grant is an infrastructure grant that's backed up with a public infrastructure grant that then is backed up with private investment. And we provided that grant, more than $2 million, to Burlington to make improvements along the Middlesex Turnpike, because we saw how the development fit into the overall economic development agenda and how the communities, and not only Burlington, but the communities around, were really embracing this. So we'll continue to support things like MassWorks. Again, the economic development bill we filed has a larger increase in MassWorks than we had this year, which was larger than the year before, right, because we value on the local level the investment that needs to be made in order for local people, local businesses to be able to realize their dreams.
Right, and we appreciate that MassWorks grant because that also benefits not only the business that's coming in, but Millipore, but it also benefits the community because it'll keep jobs within our region, it'll keep people within our region. It also addresses the Middlesex Turnpike, which is the road in front of that development, because that's been a traffic headache, and it'll help straighten out that, the tangled up road, and we're working with the with MassDOT to work on the intersection there at the same time. So working together, we can make some progress in
That's
untangling that traffic, and that's really one of our biggest problems here.
Yeah, and as you were advocating, and others that represent the area were advocating for the grant, we also had to talk about how this infrastructure investment that supports a bigger business will also support lots of smaller businesses around there, right? So, you know, I just came from Jimmy's Restaurant, and there were people in Jimmy's Restaurant who were going to the office building, office buildings down the street. There's a connection. We call it an ecosystem. And no business operates in isolation. Instead, they all rely upon each other. And when you have the coffee shop, when you have the dry cleaner, when you even have a community bank, they all rely upon customers to come in, and no community really has enough customers internal to them to support that. So when you bring in big businesses, you bring in hundreds of employees, and as you know from the technology companies and life sciences companies, those jobs have higher wages than do jobs in other areas of the economy. So you bring in all that disposable income, it really allows for small business to take advantage of things. So, you know, oftentimes while we're out there, we hear, you know, what are you doing for small business? And what we're doing for small business is making sure that big business is strong, and making sure that people are working, and making sure that the economy is humming. Going back to GE, for example, GE, the 800 people that they will bring, will produce about $160 million worth of salary that is not in Massachusetts now. That $160 million is going to find its way into the economy, and it's going to help many a small business in the long run.
Yes, there was a study done by the Donahue Institute at UMass on Hanscom as an example, and it showed that the effect of Hanscom to our region is about $8 billion a year. I was surprised, but when you think about that, you're right. It's that ripple effect. It's the fact that someone is earning a salary and then spending the salary in the area, helping out the small business. Because I think what you need in small business in this area is a good idea, good staff, good people, but customers and clients. And that's our role. That's our job, is to help with that.
So I have to tell you, the coolest part of my job. So we're at Hanscom. The governor's traveled to each of the bases, and we recognize how important the military is to the future of our economy. And many local communities really rely upon the bases as anchors.
Right.
And so we're having a meeting at Hanscom, and I sat there, I was pinching myself. Not only did I get to make a presentation to the governor, not only did I get to make a presentation to the 2 U.S. senators, but I got to sit in front of the Secretary of the Air Force, the top person in charge of the Air Force, to make a presentation. I said, wow, I've come a long way from Chelsea. So it's an awesome part of the job, getting to meet so many people, you know, get to different communities and talk about hopes and dreams. I've fallen in love with so many different places, and I've always loved Burlington. So that's not a falling in love, that's a continuing relationship.
Well, you're always welcome to go back for a date.
As long as I bring a check, or do I?
No, you don't even need that.
Okay, great.
As long as you bring some good ideas and support,
great.
which you're doing now. Any final thoughts? We're going to get to the close of our show, and I want to make sure I've given you every opportunity to tell our viewers you know, the information they need about the new economic development bill or anything else that you're working on.
Yeah, so again, the economic development bill that we filed really is about people. It's about helping people to grow and enjoy the prosperity that they should have. It's about communities and making sure the communities are prepared for success, and once they're prepared for success, they can then put that preparation into action and implement something. And it's about helping businesses grow. Technology is going to be an important part of what we do. Helping communities to figure out where they fit in the ecosystem that supports businesses that are involved in technology is important, but it all comes back at the end of the day that make sure that people have access to jobs, and those jobs provide them with the resources that they need to have a great quality of life. So
folks, I know that Secretary Ash is very active on Twitter. If you have ideas or comments, I know you can tweet at Secretary Ash, and we can talk about some of these issues. This is a very important issue to our, again, it's a focus of my work. It's a focus of our district, because as we see, I mean, we drive around down 128 and you'll see names of large companies. You know, we have Oracle, we have you know, different companies coming up, SAP, but we have hundreds, if not thousands, of smaller businesses getting their clients and their customers from them, like you say, as an ecosystem, all feeding with each other. So we appreciate the support that we're getting from from the administration, from the state. And I appreciate the way that we continue to work together so
Yeah, it's
well.
been a great relationship. I look forward to the benefits of it going into the future.
Secretary Ash, thank you very much for being our
Great. Good
guest
to
on
see you.
Rapping with the Rep.
Good to see you.
And we'll see you folks next time.